The milky coffee of human kindness. After heavy rain and a long walk in search of navigation charts, I eventually made my way back to my cafe. The usual waiter was back. The previous day must have been his day off. He spotted me draping my wet fleece over a chair while peering out the window at a particularly tall woman with bright red hair, who happened to be passing. Then the waiter strolled over to the table I was at and handed me a café con leche, my usual coffee with milk. Buenos y gracias. Good and thank you, I remarked, and the waiter chuckled. This small enfolding of myself into the local milieu made me feel warm and relaxed. I really realised it was a human contact I missed most. I hope to make some friends on the way south. For now, I would generate my own communication by just being myself, where I happened to be at the time, so La Coruna was the best place for me at the moment. If I was in the Algarve, surrounded by wintering yachts with enthusiastic voyagers aboard, I might feel a sense of loss of the intensity of my present experience. The trouble with mass migrations would be everyone would be offering the latest information and tips to make life easier. There would be no room to discover anything new for myself. Also, the local Spanish people would then stereotype me as a tourist, as a yachty, which would put a barrier up against getting to know people on their own terms. I once enjoyed cruising in the Bristol Channel for similar reasons. Off the beaten track, one can be truly individual. I saw a wonderful chandeliers for fishing boats. It was full of wire cables, wooden blocks with bright sheaves and hooks built into them. There were gritty, solid and basic materials such as nylon bar for making bow rollers and bushes on anchor winches. There were shackles, eye bolts, ropes, warps and no electronic gadgetry anywhere to be seen. I also found another chandeliers where I was shown the specific Spanish navigation charts I would need. They cost about the same as British Admiralty ones in the UK, around £15 each. It was a difficult process deciding which charts to carry and more to the point which to pay out for. The one I chose missed out the first 25 miles from Coruna, starting at the Islas Sisagas. Looking at the bit I would not be getting for any navigational hazards, I came to the conclusion it would be safe to head around the Islas Sisagas with a 5-mile offing before sailing into the area covered by the new chart. The danger would be strong winds or gear failure putting me close to the coast before I had sailed into the chart. Then I would have to rely on the GPS giving me course and distance to specific points, such as the Islas Sisagas, which I had listed in the nautical almanac. I had aboard a brand new Macmillan & Silk-cut nautical almanac, which was valuable for the information it held, such as harbour plans, covering right down to Gibraltar, nearly 600 miles south. As an absolute minimum, one can use a large-scale passage planning chart combined with the almanac's harbour plans and get by, but it is then wise to stay well offshore. The rain stopped, the sky brightened a little, I looked at more engine oil prices. The Spanish brand Repsol was half the price of Castrol. I had a strongly conditioned message ringing in my ears, always buy the best quality oil. But would I be simply paying for the Castrol name? And was it not cultural superiority to think Spanish oil was not good? Something inside me knew the Repsol would be fine, even as a counterpoint argued for the homely name of Castrol. The trouble is, it would all end up swilling around in the bilges soon anyhow, and this was how my brain cogitated and my days went by. I bought a fresh baguette and some camembert with a bottle of water for lunch. The baguette was lovely, but the cheese turned out to be the plasticky stuff in individual tinfoil wrappers. A few initial moments of satisfaction of my hunger pangs, but then the processed cheese became tedious. I had a raging appetite for some real camembert, but at least I'd eaten something. That night I ate what was left from the previous day, a particularly enjoyable fresh vegetables and pasta mix. I used and liked very much some big Spanish tomatoes which have pink, meaty insides, loads of juice and cook well. At the post office, Lista de Post, my forwarded mail had still not arrived. I supposed it would take 3 days rather than 2 to arrive. I looked around the cafe and through the windows at shoppers and workers outside. Several people in the cafe looked back at me, and I felt it was time to wander out. How much time does one coffee buy at a table? I'd been in there about half an hour. I saw some blue sky and decided to go again to the internet cafe, as until I got my replacement debit card through the post there was nothing I could really do, apart from wait cheaply. Later, back aboard, I hanked on the spare foresail. When at anchor, it is best to keep a sailing capability in case the anchor drags or the boat needs to be moved at short notice. One problem I had was the batteries were so low it would be touch and go whether the engine will turn over enough to start. Once it started, however, they would quickly recharge. I relied very much on electrics. Apart from navigation lights and radio, I needed to charge the mobile phone and AA batteries for the Scion handheld computer and the digital camera. Also, I would feel happier when the engine would be able to keep the batteries high enough to run the laptop computer. Then I could shift digital photographs of the Biscay crossing from the camera to the laptop. There were super images of dolphins playing around the bows of Storm Petrel of Narnia. I remembered the man in Wales who said, "Narnia? When did you last go there?" "Well, mate, I've had dolphins playing around my boat, so stick that up your jumper." There's my coffee brewing. Thursday, 5th of September. I notched the tree of life with a date, well actually a fig. 3 fresh green figs from a tiny fruit shop on the way to town gave me immense satisfaction. A deep ruby plum the size of an orange had me exclaiming with joy at fresh fruit. The apple in my bag from the gaddy cheap supermarket was utterly outshone by these fruits. The sun shone warmly and I carried my saxophone hopefully to find a spot to do some busking. I came across a trio made up of 2 accordionists and a double bass player. They wore black shoes, trousers and waistcoats with white shirts. Their greased back hair and polished shoes gave the impression of a dance band of the 1940s. The song they played as I strolled up was slow and delicate, with a chromatic descending bass line. It was a J.S. Bach fugue or similar. I watched passers-by, children being given coins to put in the box, and small dogs letting go last night's meal. The former gave a smile to the players, whereas the latter failed even to mildly amuse or distract them. Dog poo was mostly picked up efficiently by the owner using plastic bags, but I had seen owners of large dogs who seemed oblivious of the outpourings. The music framed the street for me, the houses, shops, windows, dresses, shoes, cigarettes, and sunshine coming out of a blue sky with a big white cumulus floating in it. Through the music, which had become more Neapolitan in style, I saw Spain being Spain. Buzzing away from Storm Petrel in my Avon Redcrest dinghy, I felt a strong attachment to the little sailing boat. By now I had chucked out the rancid water I'd bunkered in as Biscay emergency supplies. I'd also eaten my way through some of the mound of tinned food bought in preparation for the long voyage, and so Storm Petrel sat a lot better on her waterline. During the daytime at anchor, I flattened down the spray hood to allow maximum sunlight onto the 2 solar panels which were mounted on the sliding hatch. This was not ideal for the exposure to the sun, but the only really convenient place on the boat. All the other positions seemed to create an obstruction to sail or boat handling. If I had enough money to buy bigger panels, I think they could be mounted against the dodges, 2 rectangular canvas spray barriers either side of the cockpit. One panel would always be out of the sun while the other would be in it, but a panel the size of one Dodger would be quite powerful. These big solar panels would cost over £300 each. My present system of 2 5-watt panels cost around 75 quid. This was already reduced by half in a Chandlery sale. They managed to supply cabin lighting as well as just about charge the mobile phone. I didn't know how I would cope without the minimal power I got at present. That engine really needed fixing. I phoned Anne-Marie back in Bristol Marina one night. She had forwarded the mail which hopefully included my debit card replacement. I was unaware of the time it took to get mail in Spain from the UK. I guessed about 3 days. Anne-Marie was very helpful in forwarding my UK mail to wherever I asked. She was also a bright, cheerful, homely voice on the phone. She was overworking as usual, trying to establish herself as an independent woman with freedom of choice and professional standing in a competitive world. I thought about how Anne-Marie creates a certain amount of her own stress by trying to attain too much. When a boat is driven faster than its hull speed, all that happens is a standing wave builds up in front, which the boat then has to climb over. Life is like that too. As I watched and listened to the busking trio, I realised how much freedom is in just stopping and staring for a while. My past travelling experiences in Spain with a guitar were garlanded with this joy of the moment. It can only really be had in very unique circumstances, and it is necessary to shed off responsibilities to the point where one is as vulnerable to bad fortune as a sparrow. There was a concurrent thought in my mind as I wrote. All of what I had just said was rubbish, and the truth was I had massive responsibilities to myself and my boat. Each day was a struggle to keep the voyage going, a balancing of limited resources to that end. So there was the laid-back me wanting the world to sit down and solve its problems like that. And there was the adult me who had a lovely sailing boat in Spain, and this was me. And this me gripped life as tenaciously as a gecko on a hot monastery wall. I was looking forward to seeing lizards. I would know I was far enough south when I saw geckos. I would call it the Gecko Index. Felix informed me they can be found in any harbour throughout the Mediterranean. But on the Atlantic coast I reckoned I must travel a lot further southwards to gain a temperate enough climate for perennial geckos. And that is what I wanted to do. After being exposed to the sublime music of the busking band, I was disinclined to blow my saxophone. I was never a very good musician, although I did have moments of remarkable flair. I felt it would be better to wait for the moment when my playing was needed, rather than compete with really excellent players. I went again to the cheap internet cafe. I wanted to look at the website of a single-hander I met in Milford Haven. Karen was halfway around her Round Britain challenge. She was sailing a little plywood caprice, 18 feet long like Shane Acton's Shrimpy. We got on because we were both single-handers. Our excited chat was interrupted by an anti-terrorist police inspection of our documents. Karen joked that she could have sailed into Dow from almost anywhere in the world, such as Israel. This comment showed her young age, and it did not make the macho policeman laugh one bit. Despite up-to-date ship's radio license and RYA Yachtmaster qualifications, he eyed me suspiciously. It was a little too much for him to come across two single-handers on one pontoon, who were both female. He cleared us both from his concern and swept away in an orange and black rubber rib thing. Next morning, Karen had headed away towards Lundy Island, and I made my way up river in search of water, food and charts for my Biscay voyage. I found Karen's website and read her log. She made it to Lundy, then Padstow, and on around Land's End to Penzance. She was doing a great thing, and I was moved to leave a long message on her guest book expressing my appreciation of her indomitable spirit. I also took great pleasure in telling her of my success in reaching Spain. I enjoyed the camaraderie which existed between single-handers. We are a special breed of sailor, moved by solitude and wilderness as much as the attention-seeking aspect of arriving in port alone. Fluffy lost chicks needing protection. We do not seek attention, but neither do we often get much. I think well-crewed boats fail to understand the single-hander and vaguely mistrust their ability to do alone what takes 5 strong men on many boats. Pascal said, "Man's unhappiness comes from not being able to sit down in a room by himself." The single-hander does just that, spends a lot of time sitting down alone and ready for the right solution to present itself. Single-handed sailing is a philosophy in action. Fruit shop on the way to the town centre sold me the most delicious peaches, nectarines and plums. I was forced to sit in the big square as I bit into the large peach. The flesh was a mixture of dry firmness and sweet juice, none of which dripped out as I ate. The stone came away from the middle in its ripeness, and I marvelled at the way we have the wool pulled over our eyes by supermarkets with their bad quality produce compared to the fruit I had found. I had my daily apple in my bag, bought from Gaddy, the supermarket. I decided to include fruit in my daily diet to keep my health good. The Gaddy apples were cheap and local, and I chose them for those qualities, but they tasted bland and sharp. When I'd finished the peach of all peaches, I started on a nectarine. Golden red like a plum, but not as dark coloured. It was completely gorgeous. Next was a soft, dark purple, almost black plum. It had such a red insides. I worried passers-by would think I was eating a freshly carved out heart. This fruit revelation had brought Spain right into my mouth, and I walked away from the town square with more Spanish in my gait. I felt in my intestines to be part of the place. The fruit was building itself into my bodily molecules and transforming me away from the English state to a semi-Spanish version of Clarissa. accordions and double bass trio were playing the same Bach fugue I heard as I came across them yesterday. A group of Arab-speaking men talked in a bar nearby. They were guttural and had big open-handed gestures. I liked them without knowing who they were. A poster shop sold large scenes of the New York skyline with the Twin Towers intact. Two small decorative dogs on leads confronted each other with ugly, dripping snarls, saying, "I am the pavement dog here, and I shall annihilate you." A group of bronzed travellers, young with braided hair, hand-rolled cigarettes, juggling sticks, playing African drums, sat around like a micro-tribe. I didn't give them money because I'd already dropped nearly euro into the collecting box of another pair of street musicians. A young girl and boy in their late teens played tenor sax and electric guitar. Reading from music supported on a metal stand, they did sophisticated versions of Desafinado and Summertime. I asked if they knew A Taste of Honey. They did not have the music, although they enthused about the tune. They were Argentinian students. I'm strongly wrenched by street music. Maybe my past as a busker travelling Europe and then stagnating for years in the UK without getting away had left me a little sad. For years I played every day with my eyes closed, my ears tuned. I sincerely wanted to dedicate myself to being a really good musician. What I lacked was a formal approach. I sometimes looked at various colleges or private tutors, but it never really happened. Now I see this young pair playing better than I probably ever did, and part of me feels sad I never learnt to play properly. The reason for my resistance was fear of becoming a slave to what I loved. However, to have been able to keep music as a spontaneous affair was a form of success even more difficult to attain than a formal education. Or at least as difficult. It was the zen of musicianship, learning to play by not learning to play. As I encountered various buskers, I felt a powerful connection with a long-term relationship in my life. Music takes one away to its own place, what the Hare Krishnas called the music planet. The power of music is to transport the listener to a different dimension. When I passed a good street musician, I was transformed along with the day itself into a more trusting, more innocent, less pained and less worrisome individual. When I used to play regularly on the street, occasionally people would say, "Thank you." In such a sincere way, it was clear they had felt some profound relief.